Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all to today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. As you know, every single day at 10 a.m. we bring this session live for all of you to analyze the most important articles from the Hindu newspaper for the day. The only thing that we ask in return is, number one, that you pay complete attention to the discussion that is going on. Second, we all expect that you do hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel so that you can get notifications about all the new series that we are trying to bring in for you at our YouTube channel. If for some reason you have still not subscribed, please do hit the subscribe button. Also, use the comment section to let us know what are the other types of initiatives you would like from our end and how did you like this session. Also reminding you, as soon as the session comes to an end, we have a quiz on our Telegram channel based on the articles that we discuss with you. So this would be a kind of a revision for you every single day. Right after this discussion ends, I want all of you to quickly go to our Telegram channel, answer the questions based on today's article so that you can ensure that your learning is happening at the right pace. If you have not joined our Telegram channel so far, you can use the link given in the description of the video to take part in the Telegram channel initiatives as well. Now, before we begin, there is another very important news. We are bringing to you another new initiative from our side. This initiative will be called Polity This Week. From tomorrow onwards, every Saturday, at 8 p.m. you will have this session on our YouTube channel where we will be discussing the important news stories with regards to Indian polity from the last week that took place. Remember, this series starts tomorrow, that is Saturday at 8 p.m. Don't forget to join us for that tomorrow, and after that also every Saturday at 8 p.m. This will be called Polity This Week. Now, let's begin with the very first article that we have here for you. Once again, the article is based on the Ukraine-Russia war. However, it is not just talking about the Ukraine-Russia war. It is actually talking about many other things as well. The author of this article, that is Shri M.K. Narayanan, is a very famous author. He writes on national security issues. He writes on international relations because he was a former NSA, that is the National Security Advisor. The same position that right now is held by Ajit Doval, it was held by Mr. M.K. Narayanan also. He was a former NSA for the government of India. So he knows a lot about international relations, about India's foreign diplomacy, and also about what India has to do in the coming years. The theme of this article in very simple terms is, what should we expect in the year 2023? He says that there are a lot of challenges that the government of India and many other nations are still facing right now. For example, the Ukraine-Russia war that all of us thought would be over very soon is still not over. The reason being that no one expected Ukraine to put up such a brave resistance against Russia. Also because the Western countries are also helping Ukraine indirectly by supply of weapons, by supply of money. That is why Ukraine has been able to sustain for such a long time. At the same time, we saw the Western nations, US, Western European nations putting a lot of sanctions on Russia, which has pushed the world towards an energy crisis. We have discussed this topic multiple times in the past few months, how we are going through an energy crisis. Russia, being one of the largest exporters of oil and gas around the world, especially in Western Europe, since their supply has been cut down, it would automatically mean that the price of oil, price of gas has increased considerably in the international market. While it harms every country, but it harms the developing nations much more as compared to the developed nations. That is why this is also a challenge that we have to see going forward. The author here says that we are in kind of a very similar situation to World War I. In world history, you would have read about World War I, where there were two groups that were formed. However, none of the two groups wanted to go all out against the other group because they feared that it would result in a very big war. The same is happening even today. Even today, we have a situation where the two sides, that is Russia and the US, are against each other, but they don't want the situation to go out of hand. We have seen how Vladimir Putin time and time again has warned about using nuclear weapons. But he is not doing that because he also knows at the end of the day that if the nuclear button is pressed, there will be no going back. The outcome of the war is also the growing closeness between China and Russia. You have seen recently there was a statement that came from the two sides that their relationship right now is in the best ever phase in their entire history. If you look at the history of Russia and China relationship, Russia and China have always been kind of close partners because both of these are mainly communist nations. However, now that both of these see a common enemy in the Western nations, it has actually brought these two nations even closer together. We discussed earlier also how China is helping Russia by buying their oil and gas. China has invested a lot of money in Russia. Russia and China have also signed defense deals worth billions and billions of dollars. So right now, the Western European nations and the United States of America is not just facing a challenge from China alone or Russia alone. They are facing a combined challenge of China and of Russia coming together against the Western nations. Because of this, the entire world right now is worried. The author says that the military spending and the defense budget of almost every country around the world is increasing. In fact, the defense budget is expected to increase even more in 2023. The nations which earlier did not used to spend a lot of money on their budget, for example, Germany, France, Japan, these nations were not always made to spend a lot of money on their defense budget. However, now we are seeing a huge increase in the defense spending of all these nations. We discussed about Japan also the other day, how Japan actually is increasing its defense spending considerably because of the threat from China. As per the author, in the budget that is coming up, we can expect an increased defense spending from India as well. So that is also a worrying trend, because understand this, when nations around the world decide to spend a lot more on defense, they decide to spend a lot more on military, that means that money is now being taken away from some other sector. Sectors such as health, sectors such as education, sectors such as food security. Those sectors and their money is now being transferred to defense and military spending. And that is an issue with nations around the world and not just India. So increasing defense budget has two problems. One problem, it increases the chances of a conflict. Because when the nations buy so many weapons, when the nations have so much technology that they want to use, it obviously increases the chances of a conflict. And second, as I said, the other sectors will suffer. The other sectors will suffer, mainly the development sectors, mainly the sectors which are meant to run schemes of welfare for its population. That is a worrying trend. The other part of the story is that India also now seems to have a kind of a new strategy. There was a time that India was very proud of non-alignment. We always said that no, we don't align with any of the groups, we are a non-aligned nation. But now, as per the author, India is moving from non-alignment to multi-alignment. Now, what does it mean? Non-alignment means we are not a part of any of the groups. We are over and above any of the groups. We will not have close relationship with them. We will decide on a case-to-case basis which side do we want to support. On the other hand, multi-alignment means that now we are establishing good relationship with all the sides. Take an example of what is happening right now. India is a member of multiple groups with the US. For example, talk about Quad, talk about G20, etc. India has a close relationship with US. At the same time, India is maintaining good relationship with Russia as well. Our oil buying from Russia has increased considerably. We still have considerable import in terms of weapons from Russia. So India has now gone from a time of non-alignment to multi-alignment. Please understand this. When you read the Hindu newspaper, when you read articles of these very well-known people, these kind of phrases Phrase such as India is now moving from non-alignment to multi-alignment. These are very, very important for your mains examination. Either a question can be asked on this phrase. Question can be, India is now opting for a policy of multi-alignment over non-alignment, full stop, elaborate. Either this can be a question, or a question can be asked about India's foreign policy where you yourself can use this phrase that India right now is trying to move from non-alignment towards multi-alignment. So when you read these articles on the Hindu newspaper, when you attend these sessions, I want you all to make a note of these kind of important phrases, especially when they are written by well-known authors, because they can be very, very helpful for your mains examination or even in your essay paper, depending upon whatever topic it is. The author here is also talking about what India can expect from its neighborhood in 2023. Now, when you talk about neighborhood, we usually see two big challenges for India, right? The two big challenges are China and Pakistan. These have always been two big challenges for India. The author says with respect to China specifically, because China right now is involved in dealing with its own COVID crisis, because China is going through a very, very tough time. They are losing thousands and thousands of people every single day. The author says that maybe China will not be such a threat in 2023 because their concern will be to look within their country rather than opening up any new disputes with their neighbors. But then it is China, and you never know. Even when the situation is very bad inside their own country, they can very well be actually fighting against some other country at the border. But as per the author, with China, 2023 would be more of a peaceful year because they have their own internal problems. With respect to Pakistan also, the author says that he doesn't expect Pakistan to create much of a trouble. Why? Because Pakistan internally has been fighting against its own issue, that is the TTP. I'm sure all of you would have read about TTP, that is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. It's a terrorist organization within Pakistan that has almost waged a war against their own government. So Pakistan right now is involved in dealing with TTP, is involved in what is happening on their Afghanistan border. So as per the author, both China and Pakistan should not create much of an issue in 2023. That is his expectation. At the same time, India does have some other challenges. In Nepal, as you know, a new government has come up, a new prime minister has come up. It's a coalition government. Mr. Prachand has again become the prime minister. The new government is seen as a pro-China government. So the author says that that will remain a challenge. Similarly, situation in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have usually been on good terms with India. But on the other hand, both these countries, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, are also close to China. China is also investing a lot of money in these two countries, so that also remains a challenge. This is the expectation of the author as per 2023. Now, I want to share with you a couple of things going beyond this article. Number one, as the author says that in 2023, he is expecting the military spending to increase even further. Now, as per the CIPRI report, even in 2022, the world's military expenditure was at an all-time high. In 2022, because again, that was the year that Ukraine-Russia war had started. That was the year that China became even more aggressive. So in 2022 itself, the world's military expenditure actually reached $2 trillion for the first time, and it will only increase in 2023 as the budgets of the governments are announced. One more thing here that I would like to focus on is, in this article, the author here mentions that one country with which we don't talk a lot about when it comes to India's relationship is France. The author says that with France over the years, India has strengthened its relationship in various sectors. Be it the defense sector, be it collaborating on environment such as the International Solar Alliance, etc. India and France have been coming closer than ever year after year. Somehow we don't talk a lot about our relationship with France. So I thought let us discuss a bit about India-France relationship as well. France has always been a big supporter of India in various aspects. Especially if you look at the history of our Air Force. Yes, Rafale are in the news because of this big deal that has been signed. But even before Rafale, India has actually had a history of buying a lot of planes from France especially. So Indian Air Force has always been very appreciable of the technology that comes in from France. Not just this, historically, if you actually see, historically, France was one of the few nations that supported India's decision to go ahead with the nuclear test in 1998. When most of the Western nations, including US, were putting sanctions on India, France was one country that was actually supporting this agreement, supporting this move by India. France and India have signed multiple agreements, not just about Rafale, but it is also about submarines and other kind of equipment that France has been providing to India. France has also been open to sharing technology when it comes to weapons and defense systems, which has worked in India's favor. Not just this, France recently became the 23rd member of Indian Ocean Rim Association. This is the first time that a country whose mainland is not in Indian Ocean has become a part of IORA. That is also because India supported the candidature of France. India and France have also come together when it comes to investment. A lot of foreign investment comes into India from France. The two sides have also collaborated on multiple other issues. As I told you earlier, the International Solar Alliance has also been an initiative which was started by India and France coming together. The French imports from India have also increased. Thus, France has become a good market for Indian products. As a permanent member in the UN Security Council, France also has a very, very important role to play, and it mostly supports India on the Kashmir issue as well. That is why the India-France relationship also goes on strength to strength, and it is in favor of India as well. This was the first article that we have. Let me take a few comments that I have from this article. One comment that I'm seeing here is, was economy of China always, the first comment that I'm seeing is, was economy of China always this strong? Do they not have any economic crisis? No, it's not like China's economy has always been this strong. It was in 1970s, 1980s that China decided to take this turn. It was in 1970s, 80s that Chinese government policies changed and their government decided we have to become a manufacturing hub for the entire world. This was an era where a lot of people protested against the government policies as well. And because the government of China has mostly been an authoritarian government, anyone speaking against the government policies was not really left alone. For example, in China, when this cultural revolution that they call started in 1970s, we had a situation where people's land was taken away by the government because government said we want to open up factories. Anyone speaking against the government was jailed or was killed. So such kind of situation cannot happen in democratic countries like India. That is why I always say you cannot compare India and China. The kind of political system that the two nations have is very, very different. China has also had its own share of crisis. They are in a crisis even right now. But the manner in which they deal with the crisis is very different as compared to a democratic country such as India. Then I have a question. Explain CIPRI a little bit. CIPRI is an international organization that is mainly well known for producing reports such as defense budgets, weapons, nuclear weapons, etc. Okay. Then I'll have one more question from here. Is Pakistan going through an economic crisis? Yes, they are for a long, long time. Does France support India's cause in the UN permanent seat, UNSC? Yes, France, US, Russia also. Mostly apart from China, most of the countries have at some point or the other have spoken in favor of India getting a permanent seat in the Security Council. But again, just one nation alone saying it individually would not really matter, because again, at the end of the day, all the nations would have to agree. Anyway, let's come back to the second important article that we want to discuss. The second important article is about what is happening in Tamil Nadu. Now, there is a pattern that we are seeing in not just Tamil Nadu. Most of the states across the country which are ruled by political parties which are not at the center. So central government, for example, has the BJP and some of the other smaller alliances of the BJP. All across the country, the states which do not have a BJP government, which do not have the same party that is at the center, in those states we are seeing a very interesting pattern. the pattern is that in those states, the governor and the chief minister are now face to face against each other. Now, you may say there are certain exceptions. I'll tell you what exceptions are. One exception is Odisha. Other exception is Andhra Pradesh. Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, these again are states which are not ruled by the BJP or their partners. But the reality is that the parties that rule these states, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, they mostly support the BJP in the parliament whenever a national law has to be introduced. In the parliament, in most of the cases, the BJD that rules over Odisha, their MPs support the BJP stand. So in Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, we do not see a lot of conflict between the governor and the chief ministers. However, in most other states, you can talk about Telangana, you can talk about Tamil Nadu, you can talk about West Bengal, talk about Kerala, talk about all these states, talk about Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh. The one thing in common in all these states is that the governor and the chief ministers are not happy with each other. The latest episode was in Tamil Nadu. What happened here? As you know, when parliament or the state assemblies have their first session of the year, the governor at the assembly and the president at the parliament level, they come in to make an address to the house. Just like we have the president coming in to make an address to the joint session of the parliament, similarly we have the governor coming in to make an address to the assembly. These addresses of the president or of the governor are not written by them. They are given to them by the cabinet, the state council of ministers. They give in writing what they have to speak, because the governor is expected to speak on behalf of the state government only. They tell the assembly what is it that the state government will do, the achievements of the state government, the ideas of the state government, so on and so forth. Now, what has happened here is that Tamil Nadu governor skipped some portions of the speech that were given to him on 9th of January. When he came to make an address, he was speaking from the speech given to him by the cabinet. He did not speak certain parts of it. And the state government was very angry about that. State government said that you have to speak only that speech that we are telling you. Now, the chief minister moved a resolution that on record, that is the official records of the assembly, should include the complete speech and not the part that he did not speak. Tamil Nadu governor, Mr. N. Ravi, got very angry. He walked out of the assembly even before the national anthem was to be played. So basically we have a situation where the governor came in to speak. He did not really speak what exactly was given to him by the state government. He became so angry that he left the assembly. He said, no, I will not have any of it. Now, the problem here is that a lot of governors think that it is their discretion to decide how the state government will run. Let's look at what the Constitution says. Article 163 of the Constitution is very clear. It says that the governor shall exercise his functions with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, except in certain situations where he can act on his own discretion. The same article also says, if there is any confusion about whether or not the governor's discretion should be applied on a specific topic or not, the governor shall decide the same. Let me repeat. If there is a topic on which there is no clarity whether governor should act on his discretion or not, the governor himself will decide whether his discretion will apply or not. Using this, a lot of times many governors across the states in India have been trying to use their discretion, have been trying to overrule the advice given by the state governments. In fact, we have seen how in the past, many of the state governments have in fact been dismissed under Article 356 just because the governor gave an advice to the central government. As you know, the governor can give an advice to central government saying that the state government should be dismissed. In many of these matters also, discretionary powers have been misused. In fact, in 1977, after the end of emergency, when Janata Party government came to power, the first thing they did was they dismissed all the state governments where Congress party was ruling. Why? They said because your governor is suggesting us to dismiss the government, so we are doing that. It was because of the Supreme Court's intervention in between that now the misuse of Article 356 has decreased considerably. In fact, the Supreme Court has said this time and time again that the governor's discretionary powers are not unlimited. The governor cannot just use the powers in his discretion in whatever way that they want. Discretionary powers have to be used with a lot of control, with a lot of restraint. That is what the Supreme Court has said time and time again. But even then, we have certain instances like what has happened in Tamil Nadu. I'll give you one more example. Just a few months back, the Vice President of India that we have, Sri Jagdish Dhankar, a few months back, he was a governor of West Bengal. When he was a West Bengal governor, the West Bengal government was not happy with him. Why? Because of the issue of appointment of vice chancellors in the state universities. As you know, the state universities by default have governor as the chancellor. So West Bengal governor wanted to appoint vice chancellors on his own. The West Bengal government was unhappy. The West Bengal government in fact passed a law saying that from now onwards, chancellor of the state universities will be our chief minister and not the governor. These kind of issues have been happening in all the states which are majorly ruled by non-BJP parties. Similar was the case in Telangana also, where the governor and the chief minister came head to head. This is a pattern that has developed despite the Supreme Court suggesting that this should not happen. Multiple commissions have suggested how the governor's office should function. Sarkaria Commission, for example, has suggested that the role of the governor is to see that the government is formed and not to try to form the government himself. A lot of times we have seen governors try to interfere in who will form the government. We saw what happened in Maharashtra. A few years back when the Maharashtra elections happened, the Maharashtra governor, Mr. Koshari, actually gave the oath or administered the oath to Devendra Fadnavis at 5:47 a.m. in the morning so that no one can object. These are the kind of things that we have been seeing which are decreasing the prestige of the office of the governor. Now, there have been multiple commissions that have been formed in the past. There have been multiple Supreme Court judgments also on this issue about what should be the role of the governor. Also, the question about the role of the governor is very, very common in the mains examination and in the prelims examination as well. So I suggest all of you to read this very, very carefully. The ARC, that is the Administrative Reforms Commission of 1968, that was the first ARC. They suggested that the report of the governor regarding president's rule should be objective, should be based on facts. The Raj Mannar Commission recommended deletion of Article 356 and 357. Sarkaria Commission, Venkatachalya Commission, Panchi Commission, all these commissions have told how the office of the governor should be allowed to work independently without interference from the central government. The problem with the office of the governor is, if you look at the eligibility criteria, who can become the governor? There are only 2 points in the eligibility criteria, just 2. One, citizen of India, and second, 35 years of age. Nothing else. Although many commissions have suggested that the person should not be involved in politics, the person should be an esteemed person, eminent person from the society, chief minister should also be consulted. All these are suggestions that have been given, but none of that is binding on the government. In fact, we see whenever there is a change in the central government, the first thing that the new central government does is the new central government removes all the governors of the previously appointed government and they bring in new governors of their own. For example, right, and this is the same with almost every political party. You look at all the governors across the states in India right now, almost all were in the past members of the ruling party. Similarly, when the Congress was in power, you would have seen most of the governors were the ones that were sometime in the past members of the Congress party. In fact, the governor office is now being regarded as a retirement home for many politicians, which is very, very, very unfortunate. The next article I want to discuss with you is from a press conference held by the Army Chief General Manoj Pandey, where he talked about India's preparation with respect to infrastructure at the border areas especially. Now, it's an annual press conference that is held by the Army Chief, where the Army Chief answers questions from the press there are a varied types of questions that are asked. In this press conference, questions were mainly based on two things. First line of questioning was, China has been building a lot of infrastructure near border areas. How is India trying to counter that? That was the first type of question. The second type of question was, in the Ukraine-Russia war, the entire world has seen that the Russian weapons are not as effective as we thought. And because India uses a lot of Russian weapons, are we worried about it? Are we trying to look for an alternative or not? These are the two main types of questions that were asked from the Army Chief. In response to the first question about infrastructure, the Army Chief said that yes, China is building a lot of infrastructure, but understand this, India also in the past few years has been building a lot of infrastructure nearby our border areas. The credit goes to the Border Road Organization. It's a stellar organization doing an amazing job nearby our border areas where the terrain is very, very difficult, but they still have been building some of the most difficult roads and bridges. In fact, one of the reasons why China has become very desperate in the past few years is that they never expected India also to build such high quality, quick infrastructure nearby our border areas. This infrastructure is built so that the movement of our troops can be easier. The troops can travel longer distances in quick time so that we can also deploy heavy machinery, heavy weapons. That is why this border infrastructure is so important. The Army Chief said that BRO, that is a Border Road Organization, has already constructed 6,000 kilometers of road pan-India and 2,100 is along the northern borders in the past 5 years only. Multiple tunnels have been built. We all know about the Atal Tunnel. We all know about the Zojila Tunnel, the Z Morha Tunnel. All these tunnels have been made by the BRO and they are of very, very, very high quality. That is what India also has been doing to increase connectivity till the border areas, till the border villages. He also said that the Indian Army is looking to induct more women officers into the regiments of artillery and the proposal has been sent to the government. Now, as I told you, the Army press conference had two main lines of questioning. One about the infrastructure, the other about whether we are finding some alternatives for Russian weapons or not. In response to second question also, the Army Chief said that yes, we are looking to find certain alternatives because we have seen that some of the weapons may not be of very high quality because we have seen them failing in the Ukraine-Russia war. That is why if you have been noticing, India has been trying to improve our relationship with France also in terms of weapons, with Israel also. So India is diversifying its buying of weapons and trying to buy high quality weapons from as many diverse group of nations as possible, rather than just being dependent on Russia. The one thing that we have to understand is because a lot of our weapons are of Russian origin, we are still dependent on them for the spare parts. So spare parts have to come from them only. But in terms of buying new weapons, yes, we are diversifying that. That is what the Indian government has been doing as per the Army Chief. I also wanted to share with you some of the other initiatives that the government of India has been taking with respect to our border management and border infrastructure. The BRO, that is a Border Road Organization, is not just about building roads and bridges. They also do a lot of work of undertaking the maintenance work, ensuring that anyone visiting these areas does not fall into any trouble. If you have been to, let's say, Ladakh on a bike trip or on a tour, you would see that even in places where you do not find anyone from far, far away, if you get into any trouble, there would be the army there to help you out. The government of India, in fact, is encouraging more and more people to visit border areas so that the economy nearby the border areas actually improves. The travel and tourism also can give a push to it. The government, in fact, is running the Vibrant Villages program. This is a program along the China border where the government is saying that we will build good infrastructure for the tourists to visit villages near the border areas of China. In Arunachal Pradesh, etc., where economy can be given a boost through this. In fact, in the past, the government has also been encouraging citizens to visit as many different parts of the country as possible, especially near the border areas as well. The government has also been setting up smart fences on the India-Pakistan border especially. Smart fencing means fences, that is a boundary line where we can actually detect any intrusion with the help of thermal cameras, with the help of sensors, so that even if we do not have soldiers present there, we can still detect if someone is coming here. We have also been focusing on strengthening the border area development program. Again, the people living nearby the border areas, nearby the remote areas, because they don't have a lot of options of earning, because their homes, etc., get destroyed whenever there is a conflict, to boost their economy, the government has been trying to get as much infrastructure in those areas as possible also. Before I go on to the next topic, let me quickly see if I have a few questions from here. Okay, I have a question. Why India does not focus on infrastructure in the LAC? India is focusing on infrastructure in the LAC. That's the entire point. See, there are two types of things. Government of India can build or is building a lot of infrastructure such as roads, etc. On the other hand, now it depends on common people. If you visit these areas as a tourist, you would always spend more money there, so the infrastructure, the economy will boost automatically. From the side of the government has been building a lot of roads in these areas. I don't know if you have been to northeast part of the country yourself, but if you actually go, you will see that the roads and infrastructure has improved drastically in the past few years. Then I have a question. What was the resolution passed by Tamil Nadu CM when governor skipped some parts of the speech? So what happens is, any speech given in the house, there is an official record that is maintained and that is put in the archives. So resolution passed by the CM was that in the official records, let us keep the entire speech of the governor, even those parts that he did not speak. Let us preserve that as the official record and not just the parts that he spoke. That was the difference. Then I have a question. Is it safe to visit LAC? Yes, it is safe to visit LAC. There, see, at the LAC, that is the border between India and China, you do not see any attacks on civilian population as such. It's absolutely safe to visit LAC. You can go ahead about that. I'll take one last question, then go ahead. One other question that I have is, why is China opposing infrastructure along the LAC? See, again, the problem that China has is twofold. Number one, China claims it is their area, so why is India building infrastructure? Second, when you build more infrastructure, let's say if India is building more infrastructure, it is helpful for India, because then our soldiers, our troops can get deployed in large numbers in those areas, the economy will improve. Officially, China does not have any claim to say that you can't do this, because their country does not control this area. But again, it is China, they don't really follow any logic. For them, they actually have been protesting any step taken by the Indian government for these border areas. Perfect. Let's go ahead. The next article that we have here again is with respect to the judiciary and the government coming face to face against each other in the past few months. If you would have seen the past few months, there's a very interesting debate that has started between the Supreme Court and the judiciary. That is mainly about the appointment of the judges in the higher judiciary and the NJAC, the National Judicial Appointment Commission. As you know, right now the judges in the Supreme Court and the High Court, they are appointed by the President on the advice of the Collegium. Collegium means in the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of India, and after him the 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. These 5 judges together, they advise to the President who shall be the next Supreme Court judge. In other words, the government of India has no control over who will be the next judge in the Supreme Court or in the High Court. The governments don't like this. The governments think that no, we should also have a say in this. We should be allowed to decide how the country will function. So the government in the past tried to introduce something called the NJAC. As you all know, NJAC is National Judicial Appointment Commission. The idea of NJAC was that it will be a 6-member body, 3 people from the Supreme Court, 1 person Law Minister of India, and other 2 people from the civil society who will be appointed by a committee. So government wanted to replace the Collegium by the NJAC as a 6-member body, but it was struck down by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, no, we alone will decide, collegium will decide who shall be the next judge. We cannot allow any interference from the side of the government. Now, what has happened is in the past few months, a lot of people from the government has been speaking against the NJAC. First, the law minister started speaking, Kiran Rijiju. Then we have the current Vice President of India, Shri Jagdish Dhankar, who has been making a lot of statements saying that judiciary should not have struck down NJAC. If the judiciary struck down the NJAC, Parliament should have spoken up against it. So ever since he has taken up the post of the Vice President, he has been criticizing the Supreme Court for a lot of things, for the powers of judicial review. He has also been criticizing the Supreme Court for striking down the NJAC. Now the interesting part is, if you look at Article 141 of the Constitution of India, it very, very clearly says that any law declared by the Supreme Court is binding on all the courts along with the Supreme Court itself. Meaning that if the Supreme Court declares any law, it has to be followed across the entire country. So the Supreme Court is obviously not very happy with the Vice President, with the Law Minister speaking up time and time against the Supreme Court. Supreme Court in fact has told the Attorney General that please tell the government, don't make such statements. You have to follow what the court is saying, and you have to understand that there is a constitution with which the country will run. You cannot randomly make any statements that you want. Now, the Vice President, apart from speaking against the NJAC, apart from speaking against the Supreme Court on the NJAC, the Vice President also spoke against the concept of judicial review. Now, I am sure you all know what is judicial review. In simple terms, the Supreme Court of India has the power to strike down a law of the Parliament, to strike down any executive order if it is contrary to the fundamental rights, if it is contrary to the Constitution of India. Then these orders of the government, these laws will be struck down. In simple terms, this is called the power of judicial review. That is, the Supreme Court can review the decision of the executive and the laws passed by the government. Now, the judiciary does this saying that we want the country to run as per the Constitution, and that is why we use the power of judicial review. A very important role in this is played by the Keshwanda Bharati case. As you know, in 1973, in the Keshwanda Bharati case, the Supreme Court had said that the Parliament cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. If the basic structure of the Constitution is amended, they will strike it down. The Vice President of India has spoken up against this judgment as well, and spoken up against judicial review as well. When this matter was heard in the court just a few years back, the court reminded that in 1952, the Chief Justice of India, Justice Patanjali Shastri, had said that judicial review was not out of the desire of the court to overpower the legislature. No. The court only uses judicial review so that the country can run as per the Constitution. As for the Supreme Court, they are not using judicial review to go over the other parts of the government. They are using judicial review to ensure that the Constitution is followed. As you know, the Constitution of India runs on the concept of checks and balances. There is separation of power. We have three different aspects of the government: legislature, that makes the law, that is the Parliament; executive, that implements the law, that is the ministry; and we have the judiciary, that adjudicate whether the law is followed or not. All these three have been given separate powers, and they are not supposed to interfere with the working of each other. This is a concept of checks and balances. This will only be saved, this will only be preserved if judicial review is given to the Supreme Court. Otherwise, we'll have a situation where the government, the executive, will overpower the judiciary. The next article that I want to discuss from today's Hindu newspaper is about rural healthcare in India. A few days back, the latest version of the Rural Health Statistics reports was released by the Government of India, by the Health Ministry specifically. I saw the report myself. It's a 5-6 page report. It just has tables and data, nothing more than that. It doesn't have any paragraph. It just has tables of data. Now, this report tells us about the situation of rural healthcare in the country. The report says that specifically at the community health centers, we are facing a shortage of specialist doctors. Community health centers mainly are about 30-bed block level hospitals kind of facilities where you can undergo surgery, gynecology, pediatrics, general medicine. All these things will be offered at the CHCs, that is the community health centers. Right now, India has about 6,064 community health centers, but the total number of specialist doctors in these community health centers is only about 4,485. This is 2020, I'm sorry. By 2020, the total number of specialist doctors in these community health centers were only about 4,400. Meaning that we are short of a lot of specialist doctors in these community health centers. Yes, the number of doctors have increased in the past few years, but they are still not enough. We don't even have one specialist doctor per every community health center. So there is an urgent need to increase that. Now, what exactly is this problem here? The problem here is that most of the doctors don't want to work in the rural areas. If you have a doctor friend, if you have a friend who is pursuing medical, you can actually ask them and they will tell you. The problem is most doctors don't want to work in the rural areas. Why? See, after you study so much, doctor studying for medicine is very, very hard. Obviously, everyone wants to be settled at a good place. They want to be settled at a place where they can earn more money, where they have good facilities. Because of that, most doctors, most healthcare experts don't want to settle in the rural areas, because of which the rural areas also suffer. And that is why we have a situation where in the rural healthcare sector, we just don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough health specialists. The Government of India has been working in the field of rural healthcare by giving it a push through some initiatives. For example, Ayushman Bharat initiative, under which, as you know, not just the people have been given medical insurance, but Government of India has also transformed a lot of infrastructure in the rural areas as well. We have the Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission to invest more money in rural health. But as we discussed in yesterday's CNA as well, India's health expenditure from the side of the government is very, very low. It's still about 1.5% of the GDP, where the target was 2.5% of the GDP. The National Rural Health Mission also provides support to the states to offer free services in the rural areas like child health, adolescent health, etc. But again, if you don't have enough doctors, doesn't matter how many free services you want to provide. If you don't have enough qualified doctors, it will not be functioning properly. Then we also have initiatives such as the Janani Shishu Suraksha Karyakram, Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram, etc. We have Anganwadis being set up, but again at the end of the day, the numbers have not really translated into impact on the ground, unfortunately. These were the important articles from the Hindu newspaper of today. There's a question that I have. Is this report published every year? No. Report is published every quarter. This rural healthcare statistic report is published every quarter, not just every year. So this report is updated till the end of October. The report just came out 4 days back. I'll take one more question. Article 141 judgment is binding on all courts but not on Supreme Court itself. No, it's binding on Supreme Court also. Just that Supreme Court with a higher bench, with a larger bench, can overturn certain decisions in the future. But the existing decision is valid on the Supreme Court as well. One more question. Law declared by Supreme Court doesn't mean judicial review. See, if a law is declared by the Supreme Court itself, if they make a new law by themselves, that would come under judicial activism. Judicial review means when they review the law of the government, when they review the existing executive order and make changes in that, that will be judicial review. If they make a new law by themselves, that would come under judicial activism. Perfect. So these are the practice questions for all of you. First, Improving rural healthcare infrastructure would have a ripple effect way beyond health standards. Do you agree? Elaborate. What it means to say is, if we improve rural healthcare sector, it would not just improve health, it would also improve economy. See, more healthy people means more people working in the economy, more people contributing in the economy, GDP increasing, government's expenditure on healthcare decreasing, so all of that. Second, doctrine of checks and balances lies at the very heart of the Indian Constitution. Elaborate. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Try and write the questions. Try and write and see if you are able to improve. Give each other feedback. You can use the student portal for that as well. Again, reminding you, if you have still not hit the subscribe button, please do that. And also ask your other friends also to attend these live sessions. Don't go anywhere apart from our Telegram channel after this session ends, because we'll have a Hindu quiz on our Telegram channel based on the topics that we have just discussed. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.